All right, welcome. Maria, I'm going to turn it over to you. Maria is with our Office of Fraternity and Sorority Life to get us started with our Pitt Family webinar for Hazing Prevention Week.
Hello, everyone. My name is Maria. I am the program coordinator for community health and safety in the Office of Fraternity and Sorority Life. And I'm really excited to be here talking to you all about hazing warning signs and prevention efforts and how we can all work together to protect the pack of our Panthers at Pitt. I'm going to hand it over to Laurel Gift to introduce herself.
Thank you, Maria. My name is Laurel Gift. Really pleased to be here with all of you this afternoon. So I am, as our slide says, an Assistant Vice Chancellor for Compliance, Investigations, and Ethics. My office supports internal investigations at the university for students in a couple of areas, and one of those is hazing, which is why I'm with you here today. And by way of additional introduction, I am also a mom, first and foremost, of a young man who will be going to college next year, who is also an athlete. So he plays lacrosse. And the reason I bring that up is that we see some of these activities in sport often. So this is an issue that's near and dear to my heart, and I'm looking forward to spending some time with you this afternoon. And I think I will turn it over to David.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. My name's David Day. I'm the Associate Director for Student Organizations and Advising. In my office, I oversee the Student Organization Resource Center. We currently have 772 active registered student organizations on campus, and we basically work to make sure that we can manage them, can help them, and offer resources and support to help engage their missions, sure that their participants have an standing experience and support not only our organizations but our colleagues across the institution. So
Okay, so I think I'm taking us this afternoon. We'll talk about our definition of hazing, which is up here on the screen for all of you to see. One of the things that we're looking for are an activity expected of someone in order to join, participate, continue their membership in group. And that activity can be humiliating, degrading, abusive, kind of some of the horrible things that you might see in headlines, right? So we don't want anyone's participation, whether that be in sport, a student organization, fraternity or sorority, to be conditioned on anything that's unhealthy or unsafe. And we would consider that hazing. As we go through the slides this afternoon, you will see that hazing can take a broad range of forms. I call it the spectrum of hazing. So we'll get a little bit more into this definition as we move on this afternoon. Next slide, Maria. Thank you. So we'll kick off with some of the legal and institutional framework that really forms the basis for our hazing prevention here at Pitt. The first one I'm going to start with is actually in the middle of your screen, and that is the Timothy J. Piazza anti-hazing law. As many of you may remember, Timothy Piazza was a student at Penn State who died as a result of extreme hazing associated with alcohol consumption and physical injury. And his mother and father took that loss and their grief and really saw that this anti-hazing law in Pennsylvania came to be. We have one of the better laws nationwide. It criminalizes hazing, in addition to recognizing that hazing can occur by an organization, not just an individual. And it also provides for amnesty for people who come forward to report hazing. And that was so significant in Timothy's case because there were lots of young men in the fraternity that night who knew that he was struggling, and felt afraid to call the police and get help because of what they thought could happen to them, both criminally and then because of their membership in this organization. So that informs first and foremost our definitions of hazing. The fact that it is a crime in Pennsylvania impacts our response. I work often collaboratively with our university police department in investigating these matters. And then that leads us into the federal law, which is the Stop Campus Hazing Act. It came into being last year. We were required to initiate, I think, by June 1st of 2025. Because we already had the Pennsylvania law, this was not a heavy lift for Pitt. We expanded our definition a little bit. We changed and added some fields to our reporting that we were already doing. And we enhanced really our hazing prevention training and activities and webinars like this because of the Stop Campus Hazing Act. All of this legal framework is made part of our institutional code of conduct. In the student code of conduct, there's an entire chapter devoted to hazing. It defines both individual hazing and prohibits organizational hazing by any kind of student group, whether that be fraternity and sorority life, a student organization, a sports team. It can even happen in sort of less formal groups as well. So that's where the code of conduct lives, that prohibits hazing of any form and directs my office to conduct the investigations and work with our Office of Student Conduct in making sure that people are held accountable if they are engaged in that kind of behavior. Next slide, Maria. So this is a slide that really is talking about fine-tuning the definition of hazing that we talked about very, very briefly. So these are some of the three categories of information that I'm looking for. So is the activity made a condition of joining, belonging, or maintaining membership in a group? That's kind of the first hurdle. This can be anything. This can be, you're on an athletic team already. But because you're a new member, you're expected to do different things because you're new. And so while you may not be kicked off the team, perhaps you would be ostracized in some other way if you didn't participate. So it really can look a lot of different ways. And it doesn't have to be just pledging a fraternity or a sorority and you're not getting into it if you don't participate in hazing. It can be much more subtle than that. Abusive behavior is the second thing that we look for, and this is defined very broadly. So it is not just the dramatic instances that you might see in the news media with excessive alcohol consumption or physical harm. It can also be really subtle behaviors, embarrassing, degrading, name calling, those kinds of things that we would consider abusive. Really anything that could cause any kind of physical, psychological, or emotional harm is what we're looking for. And then often there's a power dynamic at play here. And what I will hear from new members in any kind of group that's going through this is, well, I chose to do this. It was fine with me. I agreed to. I wanted to be part of this fraternity, so I did it. I wanted to be an included member of the team, so I did it. So it was really my choice. And to that, we really say it's not a choice if you are looking for belonging, especially from people that may have seniority over you, whether they be the seniors on an athletic team or the officers of an organization. So choice is not the end all be all. We really look for the inherent power dynamics in that. Next slide. So the first thing I want to say about this slide is where this data comes from. This is not Pitt. Okay, for you parents out there, I do not want you thinking that 74% of our athletic teams are experiencing hazing. This data comes from the NCAA, and I believe it is 10 years old at this point. It's just the best national data that I had on hand to talk about this. And the reason that it's important to us because it triages how we are educating and where our prevention activities take place. That's really what we use this data for. So nationally, and this was for high school and colleges, they were reporting 74% in athletic teams, 73% in fraternity and sorority life, 49% in our intramural or recreational teams, and 28% in our academic clubs. This is much lower on Pitt's campus, number one. For example, I've been at the university for more than 5 years and I've never seen any hazing by any of our athletic teams. In the fraternity and sorority, I would say that the hazing allegations that we get are equal across all of these other types of groups. So we don't see a spike just because it's a Greek organization. We see just as many allegations coming out of intramural or recreational teams or academic clubs, and the numbers are very low. We're talking about 2 or 3 at most a year that are substantiated. Next slide. So what do we know about hazing in college? This is from some of that data that I just talked about. But also I tried to pull, allegations, whether they were substantiated or not, and what we've heard about. So definitely there is a component that is related to alcohol. I think we all know that, whether that be overconsumption, drinking games, that seems to be a larger common behavior than others. We've seen singing or chanting in public. We got a complaint a few years ago, for example, that someone in a group was being forced to do a music performance, like a lip sync contest. We looked into that one, by the way, and found out that it really was voluntary and they were encouraging participation, but it wasn't mandatory. Sleep deprivation. So this can come from, really intentional misbehavior where you're forcing someone to stay awake. A lot of times what we see in our students is that the demands of joining an organization can take a significant toll on the time that you have available to sleep, to exercise, to attend classes. So we talk to our students a lot about balance in their lives and prioritizing the things that really matter. Unfortunately, hazing has involved sex acts. We have not seen this at the university, but we've seen it nationally, and so I've included that here. One of the more common things that we've heard complained of is having to wear clothes that they find embarrassing. I think Maria and I think we can laugh about the Peppa Pig allegation that we had a couple years ago, where I think Maria, it might have been you, saw a person in a Peppa Pig backpack and thought that maybe it was something part of their fraternity or sorority experience. And I think we talked to the student and they were like, no, I just really like Peppa Pig and I think it's funny. So, but it can include something like that. Next slide. So this I've mentioned already once, we call the spectrum of hazing. So imagine there are arrows moving from left to right across your screen. That would be the increasing level of severity. The third violence column, I think, is what most people think about when they think about hazing, because we have these really dramatic, horrible examples every year or so from some university or college campus across the country, where a young person dies because of overconsumption. There is some kind of physical assault. I would tell you that there's also an arrow going the other direction from right to left, that these are actually the least common types of hazing that we see, that violence section. We have not seen it at Pitt, but it's out there. And so it's something that we talk about with our students. The far more common form of hazing, I would say, happens in that first column of behavior that I've called intimidation. And that is, they give someone an embarrassing nickname that, is not something that they think is fun or that they're proud of, and they're embarrassed when other people hear it. That can be a form of hazing. Social isolation usually looks like when you're getting initiated into this group, they want all of your time. They want you socializing with just them and just their members, to the exclusion sometimes of family or friends that aren't part of the organization. And that can have profound mental impact and isolation and depression effects. So another reason that we have to be mindful for these other forms of less severe hazing, but still unhealthy. And then there's that middle section, which we're calling harassment. And that's where things are a little bit escalated from the intimidation category. Now there's maybe some name calling, maybe some sleep deprivation. You're wearing something that's really overtly embarrassing. It's easier to spot frankly, and easier to catch because of that. It's that intimidation category that can be subtle and difficult, and we'll talk about how important that is for families to be on a lookout for and what you can look out for. Next slide.
So switching into gears for the FSL community specifically, last semester in spring 2025, excuse me, I sent out a survey to all members of the fraternity and sorority life community, which at the time was about 2,500 students, undergraduate students. This survey was focused on mental health and safety topics such as stress, mental well-being, alcohol use, sexual violence, and hazing. The purpose of the survey was to get a clear understanding of FSL culture on Pitt's campus, and also to better inform our office's prevention and education programs. Most of the students who filled out the survey identified hazing behaviors that they'd witnessed or been made aware of as intimidation hazing. And 70% of our responses said that they would report hazing right away. 27.6% said that they would only report if the behavior was serious enough. And it's pretty clear serious enough is a bit of a subjective term. And because of that, I used this data to make changes in our hazing prevention program. And so this year, we've now started to include University Counseling Center staff to communicate with our students and educate them to emphasize the impacts that even seemingly harmless behaviors can have on a person's mental health and well-being. We also found that women are more likely to report hazing than men. And we found that men are more likely to experience violent hazing. This could be due to gendered patterns in hazing practices found in various studies across the United States that have showed that hazing among women often centers on psychological manipulation and social pressure, while men experience hazing incidents involving binge drinking, physical violence, and endurance tests, aligning more with societal expectations of masculinity. It's difficult to think about these kinds of behaviors occurring, especially when it involves someone we love. However, it's important context to have so that we can work together as people in their support system and also with university staff who are working to prevent these kinds of behaviors on campus, and make sure students are educated on recognizing harmful behaviors and also empowering them to speak up and report if anything were to occur. So I'm citing some research done at UT Austin. They did a survey of students at their university, and most students identified that the main people they talked to about their experiences would be, apart from another member of the team or organization, would be a friend, a significant other, or a family member. So hopefully everyone here can align in one of those groups and recognize that while they may be away at a university, it is still our role and responsibility to do what we can to educate them, support them, and make sure that they have access to the resources that they need if something were to occur. So Laurel, I'll take this slide. A little bit about what you can do as one of those people within that group, or even if you are here as an instructor, as a member yourself, ways to support your peers would be to provide consistent communication to students about the definition of hazing, what constitutes hazing, going back to what Laurel said, those behavior patterns and the power dynamics at play. That's a huge thing to recognize. Also, the hidden harms of hazing. Like I said earlier, something that may seem like a harmless joke can kind of be like a paper cut. And when you get enough paper cuts, it becomes a larger issue and can do real impactful damage or cause harm. Hazing, letting them know hazing is not tolerated at Pitt. As Laurel got into, it's not tolerated at Pitt, and it's not tolerated in Pennsylvania and not in the United States. Reporting options, we will share some resources later in this presentation, and that system that we will be showing you is called the Pitt Concern Connection. And I believe everyone has access to this reporting system. It is not exclusive to the Pitt community. So outside peers, family members, colleagues can all access this form to report a concern if they have one about a Pitt student or organization. Also, the range of individual sanctions for hazing, and this one is important to me specifically, appropriate ways to build group cohesion, such as outdoor excursions, dinners, community service. There have been studies that have proven that bonds created through healthy ways of building relationships are actually more sustainable and longer lasting than those created through harmful ways such as hazing. So knowing that and helping them identify better ways to build those connections is going to be really important for us as people who care about them.
Thanks, Maria. So first, I think before we really get into this list, I'd like to share a story with our families that I just thought was really impactful and important, and a good example of how our community responds and rallies around our students. So as Maria mentioned, we have a hotline system here at Pitt. It is called the Pitt Concern Connection. My office oversees it. And it is a resource that you can use to report any concern, not just hazing. And we market it, make it available to anyone, including families. A couple of years ago, a sister reported a concern about their brother who had come home from spring break. This was a young man who in high school had smoked cigarettes before, but quit. He was also a person that was very into his physical fitness and typically got good grades. When he came home from spring break, he was chain smoking cigarettes again. His grades had significantly dropped. He was no longer working out and had really irregular sleep habits. And what she explained, both in her report and then when I met with her, was that he was very reluctant to talk about what was going on with him. He was secretive in a way that they aren't normally. They were very close. They had enjoyed a close sibling relationship. He had chosen to spend spring break with her as opposed to the parents. And was really reluctant to open up about what he was experiencing. And over the course of the week, she shared with me that he would give like a little tidbit. Like he would say, well, we had this party one night and I got hurt. Or, I couldn't work out because I'm always running all over campus, running errands for my brothers. And so she was starting to put together, as somebody who loved her brother very much, that there was something going on that wasn't just him making bad choices for himself, that it was something more than that. And she began to suspect hazing. And she used the Pitt Concern Connection to report it, which I really appreciated. And I was able to schedule a meeting with her, talk to her in detail about what she had observed, identified what she thought was the name of the organization. We got the member list from Maria's group, and were able to cross-reference that and get a sense, because she was very reluctant to even share his name. She didn't want this to come from her because she didn't want to hurt their relationship. And so we were able to get and offer support to him by interviewing all of the new members so that he didn't feel singled out, and started to kind of crack this open and figure out what was going on. And what we came to find out was that one of the brothers was a smoker, and one of his chores as a new member was to deliver cigarettes to him whenever he demanded it. So it could be across campus in the middle of the night, under any circumstances, and he started smoking himself. He was around cigarettes again. He was facilitating someone else's use. Because of these irregular habits, he wasn't working out. He wasn't keeping up with his grades. His health was deteriorating. And there were other things that we came to realize, and we were able to intervene in such a way so that activity stopped and he got the resources and support that he needed. So it illustrates a couple of things. One is we have the resources and ability to respond in a way to support your children, and we'll do that if we know about it, right? There were signs that she could not explain, but she knew didn't sit right to her. She couldn't initially say, I think this is hazing, but she did know, looking at our list here, that he had unexplained weight loss. He reported getting hurt, so there was an unexplained injury that he didn't want to talk about. He was tired. He had these irregular sleep habits. That goes to physical or psychological exhaustion. Increase in secrecy. We definitely saw that. So this list are just, this is me kind of brainstorming and working with the Stop Hazing Act group who've identified some of these signs that we can all be looking for. And what I tell people all of the time across campus, I would much rather you over-report and be wrong than to say, oh, well, I'm not sure that it's hazing. I don't think I should report it. I would rather hear about it and have it be that your son or daughter was out late night with friends and that's all it was, right? I'd rather at least have the ability to check in and determine that's all it was, rather than, oh no, this is something we didn't speak up about, and then it escalates and it gets to a more dangerous place. So please know there is no harm in reporting. These are some things that you can look for as a parent, as a loved one, and intervene, have those conversations with your student. They would rather have that conversation with you than with me. It can be scary to get an email from me. And until they know me and know that I'm not a scary person, it can be intimidating to walk into my office. So the other thing I've seen parents do that was very successful in another instance was they reached out to their child's best friend and said, hey, I'm worried about my son Ryder, and I know you two are really close. Could you just check in on him and make sure he's okay? Didn't ask for them to, divulge confidentiality or secrecy, but just looking for ways to support their child when they just, something didn't sit right. And I don't know if any of my colleagues want to chime in on this. This is probably one of the most important slides of this whole presentation. So I just want to give opportunity for that.
I think one thing I would like to add or just emphasize here is that when you're having conversations with your student, and they say something that alludes to a change in their health or behavior, for example, if you're on the phone and they say that they're exhausted, don't just take that at face value. Especially if you know they've recently or are if they've recently joined or are active in an organization on campus, ask them why they're exhausted. What's causing you to be so exhausted? Why aren't you sleeping at night? And just kind of pulling the thread a little to get a little more information out of them so that you can not only ease your concern if it's truly nothing to be concerned about, or get more information about how to truly help them and support them, because school, being in college, balancing academics and extracurriculars is exhausting in and of itself for a lot of students. But when there's an unexplained reason for this kind of thing, it's important to kind of get to the bottom of it.
A great point, Maria. So this slide is really to talk about our process once we've heard of potential hazing allegations. So reports come in lots of different ways. We put everything into the Pitt Concern Connection at some point so that we can have good data and share information with our colleagues. But we've had reports come in through the police department, through our own colleagues. I think Maria's reached out to me more than once. Hey, I saw this. It made me feel a little bit weird. I'm going to put a case in the Pitt Concern Connection. Can you follow up? So intake can take all different forms, but it starts with some kind of report. A lot of those, and you may have seen this if you've reviewed our institutional reporting, are anonymous. And that can make it harder for us to follow up, but we certainly try. So those go to my office. If it looks like the behaviors might be severe or cross that line into potentially criminal conduct, I will work that collaboratively with our police department. So they have access to the same system, and we frequently will pass cases off to one another depending on the allegations. I am one of the investigators. There's 5 additional investigators. And, we try to interview members. We try to do it in spaces that make people feel comfortable. So we'll get space in the Pitt Union and have kind of open office hours to let people drop in. If they say that they're not comfortable meeting in the union because they're not sure who they're going to run into, we will meet them at coffee shops, wherever they're comfortable talking, a Teams meeting. We really let that kind of guide the process because we want to encourage people to be open and honest with us. So we interview as many people as we can. We attempt to corroborate the allegations. We document everyone we've talked to. And if that behavior is corroborated and it meets our definition of hazing, we will make a finding of responsibility. That's where my role really stops. I'm a fact finder. And then I pass the case back over to our Office of Student Conduct. For David, if it is an organization that is part of the student organizations, his group will also be looped in. If it is fraternity and sorority life, it will go to Maria and Evan. And they will work with the dean of students to figure out what's the appropriate sanction, which can be education if it's, not a severe form of hazing, perhaps a misunderstanding, those kinds of things. And it can be much more severe, as you might imagine, up to expulsion or removal of the organization from campus. If we have a finding of not responsible, we also may make recommendations. Like, while this didn't meet the definition of hazing this time, if it escalated, it could have. And so we want all of your members to go through an education process or things like that. So we're not just wiping our hands of things if we're not able to technically prove hazing, but maybe the behaviors were not healthy or responsible, we can still intervene in different ways and certainly do. And I think my last slide is to talk about the Pitt Concern Connection. So we've mentioned it a couple times this afternoon. This is the university's hotline. If you take out your phones and scan that QR code, it should create a link for you to the reporting page. I always encourage our student, staff, and faculty to save that as a bookmark to make it really easy to report if you want. You will also note that we can, in addition to doing a web-based report, there is a 24-hour hotline associated with this system that you can call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There are interpreters for any language that you could possibly need, and you can make your report that way. There's also a great text feature, which some of our students really like to take advantage of, where you can actually text your concern into the system and it gets to me the same way. So we try to publish this information to students in all kinds of spaces. All new students got a card from me on their beds in the dorms with this QR code and ways to report. It's on the screens in the cathedral. We table at any kind of student affairs event. So we really try to get the word out about this system, encourage you to do the same, encourage you to save this information for your use throughout the school year. And really, we want to further develop our culture of speaking up. And this is one of the ways we do that. As I mentioned earlier, these reports can be fully anonymous. And so sometimes people are afraid to report hazing because they're worried about retaliation from their peers or something else. It makes my job harder, frankly. And so what I try to tell people is I can protect your confidentiality and we can have a conversation. But I'd much rather know the details from you and what you observed than have this anonymous report and have no one to talk to about this. So we do encourage people to come forward with their names when they're comfortable to do so. Does anybody else want to add anything about this system? I think one thing I can say is it's used all across our campuses, regional campuses, Oakland. David has access to it from a source standpoint. Evan and Maria have access to it from a fraternity and sorority life standpoint. We have schools, we have case managers in all our schools, our athletics departments. So we really can reach kind of a wide audience and a wide group of people that are prepared to respond to your students.
Yeah, one thing I would like to add is that this webinar is about hazing, but the Pitt Concern Connection is an awesome resource for any kind of misconduct that you may become aware of happening on campus or involving Pitt students. It is not strictly for hazing reporting. It goes across the board. So any concerns about your students' wellness or safety, this is going to be the place to report it. With the exception of immediate emergencies, always call the police if you are worried about someone's immediate health and safety.
Yeah, I'd just like to echo some of those comments from Laurel and Maria that I've been at the university about a year and a half, but I've been working in higher education for 25 years. And I'm extremely impressed, both as an employee, a staff member, but also as a parent, that these types of resources exist because, we share the same concerns that you have, and we want to guarantee that our community is as safe as it can possibly be and that we're protecting students as much as we can protect students. So I've been extremely impressed with the mechanisms in place at Pitt to allow for such reporting, and also being a staff member, seeing the follow through from the various members of staff and the various departments to make sure that a proper resolution is brought about and that proper investigation takes place. And so there's no concern that we overlook. And so I would just emphasize the fact that as a student affairs staff, as a university, I've seen a real commitment to be able to protect our students and make sure that we're ensuring that our community is as safe as it can possibly be, and that our programs are as airtight as they can be to be able to make sure that our students are having the best experience possible. And really, we want to foster that sense of belonging throughout our campus. And that doesn't happen by accident. And this type of mechanism really helps us kind of protect our campus community.
Well, I think this last slide is supposed to say, oh, it does say questions.
I was gonna say, I just want to remind everyone that the Q&A is open if you want to pop your question into there. Thank you. That was a lot of information, really good information shared in 41 minutes. You got through all of that. Lots of resources. But the Q&A is open. We can leave it open for, 3 to 5 minutes if you think of something you'd like to ask our panel. All right, we've got our first question. I'm going to throw it out there and then anyone from the panel can answer, or multiple people. Are leaders in these organizations asked to go through trainings each year to educate them on hazing?
I can answer for fraternity and sorority life specifically. Our student leaders are trained every semester. So before the recruitment period starts for all fraternities and sororities that fall under our office, they have to complete hazing prevention training before they can even start recruiting. Part of that process, we also have them outline their entire new member education process during the intake period of them recruiting and initiating new members. And that is also due before recruitment starts every semester for us to review as an office on an individual basis. I had another thought and I lost it.
Well, I'll add one in, and then maybe David wants to chime in about sources, activities. one of the provisions of the Federal Stop Hazing Act required that the university make hazing prevention training available to all students, staff, and faculty. And so for the first time this year, all incoming students were required to take a training related to hazing prevention, which would have included many of those leaders in those organizations.
Thank you both. Oh, David, I'm sorry. I just saw you on mute. Sorry.
No, no problem. I just want to add that as part of our re-registration process for student organizations, members, officers of student organizations have to complete a mandated training, and the hazing prevention and information is a part of that training for student organization leaders. So in order for your organization to be recognized and active for the semester, there has to be a demonstrated awareness of hazing policies and prevention tactics here at the university.
Thank you. The next question is, does hazing only happen when students are involved in clubs or activities? Is it possible that it comes from a roommate in the residence halls?
I'll take that one first and then see if my colleagues want to add into that. So if this was conduct that's really between two people, which we see roommate disputes all the time, right? That is more likely to be just a straight student conduct issue. So it may involve prohibited conduct under the code, such as harassment or bullying, which we might not consider hazing. I think the place where it would cross over into hazing is if I'm imagining a floor in a dorm, and you're a new resident on that floor, and they make you do chores, or they give you a rude nickname, or they're treating you poorly because you're in your first year. That could be an example of hazing. So I think my direct answer to your question is it doesn't only have to be clubs and activities. If it was a one-on-one disagreement, more likely that it's not hazing and it would fall under some other provision of our code. Possible that it could happen between a floor or suite mates, where you're dealing with a sense of belonging in that community.
Thank you. Want to make sure I didn't cut off any other panelists if they wanted to speak up. Wonderful. Our next question is, given these organizations fall under Pitt, is anyone overseeing and checking in with these leaders throughout the semester, especially during a recruitment period? And so I'm guessing, since you're mentioning recruitment, this question is specifically about fraternities and sororities, but there's lots of other organizations that we've discussed today. So if there's another, group of organizations that this question is related to, pop it back in the Q&A so we can make sure we get you your correct question.
I will take that one. So all of our fraternities and sororities at Pitt that fall under our office, there are 32 Greek lettered organizations that our office does not oversee, but we have I think 34, no, we have 40 organizations that fall under our office. I don't know why I just forgot about 6 of them, but every single organization that we oversee has an advisor that is either selected through their national organization's headquarters or selected by the chapter. Some of them are Pitt staff members, some of them are alumni of the organization, others are people who have applied to be the advisor and were hired to advise that organization. So they have direct contact with an adult as an advisor, affiliated with Pitt or not. In addition to that, everyone in our office has we have a chapter coaching model. So each of us have a certain number of organizations that we meet with on a regular basis. And we provide them with resources, we check in on them. So the long answer is, in many ways, yes, we are checking in with our student leaders. We are having conferences. We are taking them to conferences in other states to learn more about recruitment practices and new member education processes. And then we also have council advisors. So all of the interfraternity council fraternities, we have 20 of them on campus. I am the advisor for that council. So there are many layers of checking in and advising that are involved in the fraternity and sorority experience.
Thanks, Maria. Our next question for anyone on the panel. Are there regular student awareness programs regarding this topic? And as a follow-up, is there awareness regarding mental health support for students having such experiences?
I will answer and then open it up for Laurel and David to chime in if you guys have anything. This week is actually National Hazing Prevention Week, and this program is part of that initiative. We've had other programs open to the entire Pitt community throughout the earlier this week. But in addition to that, we have regular messaging being sent out on our TV screens on campus. Those will be cycling through the rotation all year long to keep it relevant and keep everything on people's minds, keep it fresh. Regarding mental health support, a lot of times we will refer students to the University Counseling Center. Our office the Office of Fraternity and Sorority Life has recently strengthened our connection with that office as we've been utilizing them to co-facilitate some of our hazing prevention trainings. So we've been really providing a lot of the resources that they provide to our students.
I think in addition to that, Maria, I would just also underscore the fact that every semester we have at least one campus awareness safety fair and sexual prevention fair, which I know we don't like to think about it, but sometimes sexual assaults can be a component of hazing. And at those fairs, there are lots of resources available to our students. So not only related to hazing prevention, but our University Counseling Center will be present, my office will be present, the police department is present, and other support resources that are available across campus will participate in these fairs. I know that I also participate in all our regional campuses as well. They have similar kind of orientation and student safety awareness programming every semester, in addition to the digital and other kind of marketing materials that the students get throughout the year.
Yeah, I want to add to that as well, just in terms of our office, we send out a bi-weekly newsletter that contains any information that we're asked to share. We've certainly been helping to send out messaging this week about the Hazing Prevention Week. The other thing I want to mention is our student organization advisors go through a training, and they're mandated reporters where if they hear something, they're required by law to report it. And so there's a number of kind of safety mechanisms to ensure that reporting does take place. And the other thing I'd say, just from being on campus, that there's a lot of signage around campus, whether it be related to resources for mental health or resources connected to Pitt Concern Connection, where whether you're in the bathroom or the elevator or, just walking through campus, we have magnets in our office. There's stickers around. So really, it's almost so common that you almost don't even notice it, but I would say that it's prevalent across campus, that there's signage and notices about these resources. And anytime we have an opportunity to talk to students, I'll be the first one to say there's no problem that we can't help you with as long as we know about it. And so as a parent, certainly you would want to encourage your student to seek out assistance. But I've found that there's an overwhelming amount of assistance available should your student need it. And those resources, I believe, are very accessible and available to them. And so it's literally a matter of, filling out an intake form online, clicking a QR code, making a phone call, walking in the door of an office. And so I think that those resources are readily available for our students.
Right, we are coming up on our 1 o'clock time soon. If there are other questions, we do have an addition to our resources in the Q&A. But if there are any other questions that our panel can answer, as a reminder, this webinar will be viewable on the Pitt Student Affairs YouTube page. In about 48 hours, we'll get that posted. All right, wonderful. Well, thank you so much to our panelists for joining us today. Thank you to our families who tuned in. We hope that you found some valuable information. And as always, you can email parents@pitt.edu if you have any follow-up questions. I can connect you to any of our panelists and my colleagues. And we thank you for spending your lunchtime with us. Thank you all.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.